Brambro back with some Grand Tactician Civil War CSA campaign in the 1.06 beta. This campaign is kind of focused a lot on exploring all the ramifications and implications of how to play the game and run the economy and recruit troops and buy weapons and stuff in the 1.06 beta. So there's a lot of talking going on. The time paused. It's just kind of the way it's going. And we're here in the winter of 1861. And also because of the focus of the campaign to try to see a lot of these effects over time, in some ways, not a whole lot, but in some ways taking it a little bit easier on the Union than might otherwise have been the case. That said, they were pretty, they were kind of a punching bag there for quite a while. They're starting to show some signs of life, and at least on the campaign map, okay? Not as much tactical battles, but at least on the campaign map, they're starting to do things that are kind of presenting some interesting strategic decisions. Well, I'll put it that way. But anyway, so, if you're new to the channel, new to the series, have a look. If you like what you're seeing, then leave a like, leave a comment, perhaps even a subscribe. I do have plenty of other GTCW content on the channel, 3 completed campaigns in 1.05, which is still the current version of the game as I record this. Alright then, in no particular order, let me just kind of run through maybe some of the comments that we've gotten on recent episodes. One challenge that has been a recurring item of discussion is transportation capacity in moving goods up into Kentucky. In order to improve 2 things. Number one, our army's in Kentucky, just to improve the supply situation for Albert Sidney Johnson's Army of Tennessee, which is currently up at Covington. He's been kind of making the rounds all over the place. Any given episode, they're at a different spot. But also because improving availability of goods in general, right? Not even necessarily military-specific stuff, but may also help a bit with Kentucky state support, which, if we look up in the upper right, is at 64%. And it has gotten as low as 62%. Therefore, just a tiny, tiny bit, but it does look like Kentucky state support is now going in the right direction. So I'm a little encouraged to see that. And so I got a comment about, well, if you improve your transportation subsidies, then that will improve, that's what it does. It improves the transport capacity. So that should help, right? And the answer to that question is yes, it would, very much, if I were still in 1.05. Transportation subsidies are no longer a subsidy category in 1.06. Take a look at the finance screen. Okay, so we have 6 categories of subsidies: politics, economy, ag, industry, military, and diplomacy. These are not the same some of these were there before, but there were some old subsidy categories up through 1.05 that are no longer in 1.06. Transportation is one. Recruitment is one, and civil order. All right, those were old subsidies sliders that we no longer have. The functions of those older sliders, which are now gone, are now fulfilled by other things, by particular buildings, and by the new project system. So, for example, in federal buildings, markets increase transport capacity. So a lot of the function of the old transportation subsidy slider have been transferred to the markets building. And that's why I have been building markets. Look at the market heat map. That's why I have been building markets all through here and up into Tennessee and Kentucky, which, yeah, these are recently built. So we've got more transport capacity in Tennessee and Kentucky than we had before. I think I built these over the last, 4 to 6 weeks or so in game time. And then the other, and then that ties into another comment that was made, that a project which improves transportation capacity is infrastructure reform. Okay, each level of this project further increases transport capacity of all the nation's IIPs. So that sounds pretty powerful and worth pursuing, and I would like to do that. However, there's a cost there, an opportunity cost. Okay, there aren't very many industry projects. There's really only these two: the infrastructure reform, and then also the subsidized industry, which further increases industrial productivity, which also sounds attractive. However, these aren't the only things that uses industry subsidy. The other use for industry subsidies are lots of company buildings. Brickworks, which I did build one, foundries, ironworks, lumber mills, factories. And we can see from these priority indicators on the right that all of these are considered high priority. I need all this stuff. So that's the opportunity cost. If you pour the subsidies into the industrial projects, which do look worthwhile, I am not down talking them at all, then that is industrial subsidies that cannot go into these buildings, all of which we need, particularly factories, I think. Now, we do have some factories and mills and ironworks and so forth. So, and I'm talking in general here, not necessarily what I'm going to do in this campaign, because I haven't decided. But that kind of makes me think there's kind of two ways that a player, I think, could reasonably have a crack at the industrial side of the game. Option one is to go ahead and use industrial subsidies to build these things, foundries and ironworks, and put all the subsidies into these. That's option one. And I think it's a good option. I think it would work. Option two, however, is not build those. You do start with some. And so if you put money into subsidized industry, okay, you're not building. And just to simplify things, take factories. I can increase industrial output by building more factories, using subsidies for that, or I can increase industrial output by improving the productivity of my existing factories. Which one's better? I don't know. One would have to really get through and kind of spreadsheet the thing and figure out the numbers, and one way or the other might be better. Don't know. However, a similar but distinctly separate question is, okay, well, so one might be better than the other, but are both approaches viable and would be a reasonable way to proceed during a campaign? I suspect the answer to that question is probably, yeah, that'll work. One may not work quite as good as the other, but they'll both get you there. You know what I'm saying? So I thought that was kind of an interesting observation. And then the other thing is, very similar question is posed by, well, we can either improve our transport capacity by spanning markets all over the place, as I have been doing, or maybe it's better just to plow industry subsidies into infrastructure reform instead. And it's that same argument. Which one's better? I don't know. Will they both work and kind of get you, to where you need to be? Probably. Anyway. And maybe then just kind of a combination of the two to some extent. Maybe we pour our subsidies into increasing industrial productivity, and then as far as new buildings, just occasionally, not very many, but occasionally we just eat the cost and buy some of these buildings outright without being supported by subsidies. Okay, so, there's a combination of those strategies available as well. And same with the markets, which really aren't all that terribly expensive, to be honest. Okay. What else did I want to talk about? There was just a real short item here. A couple of battles ago, I kind of took a few minutes out and kind of went on a well, it wasn't a rant, but it got on my soapbox a little bit about creek terrain. And then in the following two battles, promptly march my guys around creeks and swamps. And I did say it, but I don't think I emphasized this point enough in that little soliloquy. When I was talking about, oh man, these things trash you up for cohesion and fatigue and cause morale problems, and that was primarily in the context of when engaged with the enemy, when taking fire. That's when it all perfect storms on you and causes the morale problems. For troops that are not under fire, yeah. Sometimes you just got to march across a creek. I mean, the battlefields they're everywhere, right? So, yeah, sometimes you got to march along a creek or across a creek or through a swamp. It's just got to be done. But the point being, I try very hard not to do that sort of thing with brigades under fire or imminently about to engage, unless I really have to. In the last battle, I think there was a swamp, and exactly what I was talking about could be seen in action. There was a division moving. There were two brigades in line with each other. One was in completely open ground, and one was in partial open ground, but also a bit of it was in the swamp. And sure enough, the brigade on the left in open ground marched ahead just fine at a decent rate of speed and didn't lose fatigue. And the other one just got kind of trashed. It was much slower. It had some cohesion and fatigue. But that division was not under fire as they made that advance. So it didn't hurt too much, right? I mean, once they get stationary, the brigades do recover from cohesion and fatigue fairly fast. Okay. Enough breath spent on that. There was a comment I had mentioned in the last episode, or maybe the episode before, that hey, this farm mechanization project looks really good, and I think it does. But there was one comment that says, well, is that true for the CSA though? Because doesn't most of its food probably come from plantations, not from farms? There is some truth to that. The Confederacy obviously has a buttload of plantations. They're all over the place. All right, especially in these. Let me find the right heat map. In these slavery concentration areas, right here in the Delta. There are a little side note. There's actually two Mississippi deltas. Okay, there's the actual river delta down here below New Orleans, where the Mississippi empties into the Gulf of Mexico. Okay, and it's even named here, Mississippi Delta, right? This is a delta. Like lots of big rivers have those. The Amazon Delta, the Nile Delta, etc. That's one term. However, often Mississippi Delta also refers to this region up here, okay? Just above, with the bottom right here around Vicksburg, you got the Mississippi River running here, and this here is, I don't think it's named on this map, but this river is the Yazoo. And this kind of sort of D-shaped region in between the two is also often called the Delta, or the Mississippi Delta. Just kind of a side note there. And sometimes when you're reading stuff and you don't know that, it can get confusing on just where the heck the author is talking about. So yeah, there are a lot of plantations, and plantations produce several different items, most of which are cash crops intended for export. Primarily cotton, but also sugar and tobacco. All right, those aren't food items. However, plantations also produce rice, which does feed into food. But okay, here's workforce, right? Now this map shows free workforce, right? I mean, not, just to be honest about it, here's where the white folks are. Hopefully I don't get in trouble for that. And there's farms here too. And just to illustrate the point here, let's have a look at, so this is, let me do these filters here. Confederacy plantations. Yes, there's a buttload of them, but let's turn that off. How about Confederate farms? Whoa, there's a buttload of those too. And it's showing a lot of zeros and everything because I just loaded up the game and time hasn't run yet, and the economy needs a little bit of time to kind of catch up. So yeah, I think we have enough farms that farm mechanization will have a substantial effect. And the specific, just in case someone didn't see that last episode, what I'm talking about there is this farm mechanism, which is actually available now. So what it does, this project further increases farm output and available volunteers. That's the main reason I'm really interested in this. I mean, they're both good. I want both effects, but this volunteer bit is kind of the preeminent of the two, and I'm taking that level right now because it's available. There we go. I did take plantation mech earlier, and I was doing this because interestingly, it doesn't just increase productivity in general. It specifically increases cotton production, which is the Confederacy's primary cash crop and primary export. That's why I went for that at the time that I did. Would I do it again? I don't know. Knowing what I know now. But so there's a level of farm mech, and yeah, I'll probably take another level or two of farm mech as the campaign goes on. Because, and I've talked about this a couple of times recently, our manpower situation isn't really all that great. We have a decent sized military overall, and we have a decent sized volunteer manpower pool as far as replacing losses in existing units, casualties, and attrition. And also just growing the brigades too, right? If you recruit a small or a medium-sized brigade, it will gradually grow to full size if left alone. So manpower is going into that as well, because we have extremely few, if any, full-size brigades anywhere in any of these armies. And as I've said before, that number seen there in the tooltip, the 48K, doesn't show the state-by-state breakdown. We really can't recruit as much out of that as it looks because individual states have to have enough recruits for a brigade of a given size. And if we look state by state, I've done it recently, but I'll do it again in case anyone didn't see before. If just theoretically we wanted to, I'm not going to do it, but there has to be enough for the union within the state. And we have a lot of states where we've got some men, but not enough to recruit a full or even a medium-sized infantry brigade, right? For example, here in Indian Territory, what will someday become Oklahoma. There's 1,350 troops here, right, which are part of that 48K, well, this is showing 65K. Yeah, so our the recent moves that I've made, the recruiting office and the, well, I don't think we've completed the Militia 3 yet, but our manpower pool is coming up some. So this number is part of the pool number, but is not enough to actually recruit anything bigger than an artillery battalion in Oklahoma. Florida, right? We can't recruit anything there. Maybe an artillery battery. Delaware, same thing. Arkansas, same thing. Kansas, same thing. Not that I'd want anything from Kansas because they're at 35 state support. And even some of these bigger ones, like we could recruit one full-size infantry brigade out of South Carolina. One from Tennessee, right? We can't even recruit a small infantry brigade yet in Texas. So yeah, I'm interested in further growing our manpower pool, even though it is coming up, and farm mechanization is part of that. And then finally, I'll also note, it's not huge yet, but this gap is growing. We were at a point not too long ago when the Union was maybe about 20,000 men ahead of us. And both of our armies have grown since then. Winfield Scott's is growing faster than ours is, to where the gap is now almost 50,000 men. That's about 45,000 men there. So, yeah. We need a bigger army. Or otherwise, eventually, not real soon, but eventually, we're going to start getting into some problems in the tactical battles, right? Even now, we're facing a situation where, not visible at the moment, but we know that there are Union armies right here around Grafton and Cumberland that are significantly bigger than Beauregard's Army of Western Virginia, to the point where, kind of the theme with the last several episodes has been trying to get Hardee's Corps up here to help. And there's been some challenges with doing that along the Ohio River. Which brings me to the next point, and I think that finishes kind of addressing some of the comments that have been made recently. So as this campaign has evolved, the grand strategy has kind of coalesced into, the main theme being consolidating control of Kentucky, which we are doing, and establishing firm control over the Ohio River, and using the Ohio River as a highway. Right? And already in this campaign, we've seen several instances where the mobility afforded by this river has enabled Johnston's army to move up and down and quickly respond to Union moves. And there is still an issue with control over this stretch of the river. We just fought a battle here at Covington because West Virginia militia, Union West Virginia militia, had come over here and started capturing it. And we're trying to use the river eventually, if we can, to move Hardee's Corps up to Marietta to join Beauregard to go clean out Grafton. Well, I had also mentioned earlier that in this campaign, because we want it to go on for some time, because of the update, also kind of taking it easy on the Union, primarily by simply not taking Washington. That was the hard and fast rule. But that idea has also made me reluctant to capture Cincinnati, Ohio, because that's a 10-point city, and he's going to take a bigger morale hit, national morale hit, from the loss of Cincinnati than they would from the loss of the likes of Marietta, Ohio, or Evansville, or Cairo. However, it's pretty clear, it's always been clear, that the idea of firm control over the Ohio River without control of Cincinnati is really kind of silly. So I'm going to go ahead and capture Cincinnati, Ohio, which basically just means Hardee's going to walk across the bridge here in a minute when time starts rolling. Which not only opens up this stretch of the river firmly, but also gives us a nice direct rail link from Cincinnati to Marietta. Which in turn should also help supply to Beauregard's army, both river and rail. Right? And they've got supply issues over here, obviously. Garnett's at 83%. He's low on food. His condition is still good right now, but it's not going to stay that way. And right now, infrastructure-wise, we've just got these just roads across the Appalachians, right? Union's got Grafton. There's no rail link coming this way. And to the extent that he's getting any supply up this river, that may be impacted as well by the fact that the Union still controls Cincinnati, and still they don't control this town, but they control this ferry here. So I think Cincinnati needs to become Confederate, and hopefully their national morale doesn't drop too much as a result. And then the final thing I want to mention is I mentioned that the Union has been giving us some pretty interesting strategic problems on the campaign map. The last couple of tactical battles have not been very compelling. A lot of that manpower that we saw that the Union is building, I mean, they've got a lot of armies. They have more armies than we do. They're spreading out their manpower. Individual armies, a lot of them on the Union side, aren't all that terribly big. Some are. McDowell's got a pretty big force over here just at Washington. I think it's 30,000 men, last I looked. 31,000 men. But a lot of these armies, particularly in the West, are not very big, and so we get these like 2-to-1, 3-to-1 odds battles in troop strength, and so the tactical battles, I don't know. I have read over time in Steam discussions, it's fairly regularly, someone will mention the auto-resolve is pretty awful in this game. And I have no reason to disbelieve those statements. However, I've never experienced it myself. I don't know that I've ever resolved a tactical battle in this game. I'm sure I must have, but if I did, it was a long time ago and I don't remember it. And also, I know that there's a few people watching this series who maybe haven't played the game before and haven't seen that. So I'm thinking at least, at least for the next, until we see a couple and just kind of see, ooh, yeah, okay, that's what they were talking about. That really is a bad idea. The next couple of times around, if I get a 2-to-1 or better ratio in a battle that occurs, let's auto resolve a couple and just see how bad it really is. Or maybe it isn't as bad as people say it is for lopsided battles like that. I'm not going to auto resolve any battle where it's like even numbers on both sides, or if we're outnumbered. Yeah, I'm not auto resolving that stuff. But if we have any kind of just slam dunk battles where it's an obvious win, yeah, let's auto resolve a couple and just see what happens. Okay, at that point, I think we are ready to start moving time. Let's take a look at the armies and just kind of review what they're doing. Lee's army, Northern Virginia, same plan. They're sitting tight in winter quarters. We don't want to move any more than we have to because of winter conditions. Oh, Garnet. Or Beauregard. I don't want to build a supply depot. I'm having a hard time finding any other solution to this problem. Because even though I've talked about I didn't want to just seed Grafton for the rest of the winter, it's starting to feel like that may kind of happen anyway. So Garnet and Beauregard may be stuck here on, near Marietta for some time. I'm going to go ahead and build a supply depot. Okay, already mentioned before, I'm just going to go ahead and take Cincinnati, come what may. Now that makes... Covington was already important enough in itself. The combination of Cincinnati and Covington, which is really kind of a dual city here, sitting on the Ohio. I think not only am I going to build... not only am I going to take Cincinnati, but I've already started building a supply depot. And I think I'm going to go ahead and do like the market and hospital thing up here as well. Okay, so there goes Hardy to take Cincinnati. And there is a federal army right here building a supply depot. So we could still be seeing some fighting here during the winter. Now, this supply depot is building. And I'm moving Hardy away, right? He's not going to have his combat radius on that supply depot. But guess what? Johnston's Army HQ is, and he can keep building it. And that has come up in campaigns before, but I don't know if that's been mentioned in this campaign. Your Army HQ, which ostensibly is just one guy, Johnston himself, yeah, plus his staff. There's no actual men here, but they can still build stuff within their combat radius, right? So you can kind of use the Army HQ as a sort of a de facto engineering unit as well. And I don't think that's too gamey. I mean, yeah, he himself is just his HQ unit, right? But he's got 32,000 men. You know, he can tell Hardy, hey, you know, slice off a work detail of 100 dudes, send them back here, get them working on the supply depot. Yes, sir. Okay, and we've got, this is a new corps. This is Harvey Hill, D.H. Hill. And he is now part of the Army of Tennessee under Johnson as well. He's moving up to Louisville. And that's fine. Originally, he was going to come all the way around the railroad this way. I guess he changed his mind. He's cutting across the mountains here. In the winter. That'll suck. Oh well. You know what? That doesn't look right. I'm wondering if... I mean, it's showing railroad movement at the moment. I don't know if he should be going that way in wintertime. That looks like Attrition City. Well, if I give him a stop order, by the time he halts, he'll be up here somewhere, and yeah, just keep going. Whatever. Okay, kind of the same plan for the Missouri Army. They're in good supply, I think. Yeah. Drawing from this supply depot, which is getting a little low. How are we doing down here? There's a lot more stuff in this supply depot, which has had time to fill. Rather than wait for him to run out of supply, because this one gets run dry, I'm going to move the Missouri Corps down to about here. At that spot, I think he will be able... He can't use any of that, but I'm just enabling it so it stays enabled for if he ever needs it in the future. From here, I think he'll be able to draw from both supply depots. And keep from just running one of them dry. So we'll do that. It's a short march. That shouldn't hurt him too much. Haven't forgotten, Louis Hebert is down here. He's building that telegraph station in at Little Rock. And when he's done with that, he'll come up here and build one at Batesville. I haven't forgotten about him. I know there's at least one commenter who keeps an eagle eye on what I'm doing with the engineer. Which is good. It helps me not forget about him. Okay. And speaking of engineers, do I have this brigade yet over here in the east? I do. Ledbetter's brigade has now been recruited, and I specifically recruited that guy to form another unit. Which I'm now not exactly sure how I'm going to form, because I cannot create an independent corps. Because I don't have organizational reform yet. So I can't create an independent engineer corps. I can create an independent engineer army, which seems like awful overkill. I guess that's what I'm going to have to do. Create a new army in Virginia. Transfer. And I don't have to have a corps or a division in it. I can just put that brigade under an army. Okay. Which means I gotta find... The problem with that is I'm dedicating a senior officer to that. I'm not a huge fan of this. What did I just make the Army of Virginia? I mean, see, that's the issue, is any officer I put in command of this thing becomes a lieutenant general, which seems, man, that's overkill. Oh well, that's what we're stuck with at the moment. And what's happening there is the talked about this before, but the Army Corps structure currently in 1.06 is a little bit buggered up. It used to be up through 1.05 that when you research the Military 2 policy, you would get the Army Corps structure, which meant two things. You could put corps underneath armies, but you could also create independent corps. That's this grayed out button here. Well, it was partially implemented, right? I think it's an oversight by the devs that they will eventually correct. It turns out that researching Military 2 policy in 1.06 still allows you to put corps-sized armies underneath Army HQs. And when you go to create an army, it's a true army with a lieutenant general or higher in command. However, they did implement that you can't separate off a corps to act independently, and you also cannot create an independent corps. So that's why I'm having to make this full-size army with a lieutenant general in command of one brigade. It's just the way it is right now. They'll fix it. That said, let's at least go to try to find an engineer. Do we have any engineers? Got a few. Well, is Tribune an engineer? No. We got this guy. Okay, Beckham. You are now a lieutenant general with a brigade under your command. Actually, you know what? There is another way to do this. And I'm going to do it this other way. We cannot create an independent corps, but what we can do is create another corps under the Army of Northern Virginia. I think I just, for gameplay reasons, there's probably no reason to do it this way. But this just seems less silly. So I'm going to create another corps under Robert E. Lee, and this is going to be just a little engineering corps. And we'll put that guy over there instead. Beckham, he's an engineer. And that one brigade, yeah. That Ledbetter brigade. Ledbetter is also an engineer, I think. I think I put... Yeah, I did the same thing there. So this brigade will put him under Beckham like so. That's better. And there is no... Since there's no forces underneath this Army HQ, he won't form when we exit out of this screen. I think that's just a little cleaner. And the other one, and we'll call it the we'll call this a second engineering corps. That's fine. So it'll take a few days for that brigade to actually come up here. But meanwhile, I can move Beckham over here while he waits for his brigade to show up. He should go over there pretty fast. It's just him. And then he can start working on a fort here when he gets over there. Okay. There goes Hardy. Now let's just keep an eye here on Hill, and just see what kind. I mean, we're already kind of seeing it. This is a brand new corps. They have seen no combat. They just now got established, and he's already seeing 1,000 men in attrition. Slow movement, winter. Oh, we just built something. There's our brickworks. We got 2 brickworks going now. Yay! Now, are brickworks actually needed for anything military? It doesn't appear so. There's some possibility that bricks are just kind of somehow important to construction of buildings in general. But there's nothing that explicitly says that, so I don't know if that's true. But brickworks are in demand in the economy, so maybe just having enough of those kind of helps with private wealth, which in turn will help with state support and with tax revenue. Right? If the people are wealthier, you can tax them more. Actually, we can't because we have not enabled income tax. Nor do I think I really want to. But it should increase the volume of trade, so more sales taxes and tariffs. So, this hospital is almost done. Cincinnati is almost captured, and the Army of the Ohio doesn't like that. 12,000 men. And there's another army over here. So, yeah. Yeah, here he comes. I don't like that at all. Putting a short break in just for a moment. Yeah, this army is not much smaller than Hardy's Corps. 14,000, 12,000, and there's an army over here building a depot. That army could very well be within reinforcement range. He is moving in defensive mode, though. Which means even if he comes over here and engages, we would have the option of going to a siege situation. Which initially I think would be in our favor, except for our supplies aren't good. And this army could actually come over and get involved in it too. So I don't think that would work out so hot either. There's also the situation that Hardy's got 1,500, almost 1,600 men disabled. About half of those are casualties from previous battles. I mean, he's fought a lot recently, and his numbers have been getting worn down. Okay, Cincinnati is Confederate now. Which brings us a nice factory. What it is not getting us, it would have been nice if there was a damn supply depot around here. How big is this army? It's, well, okay, this one, it not that long ago, this was just one artillery battalion here. That's grown to a decent sized army. We know there's that's probably Scott's West Virginia militia, which isn't that big, especially after the last battle. That's probably, I don't know, 6,000-7,000 men there probably. I don't remember. Of course, they could have more guys coming too. I also just now noticed somebody's building a depot here. So there's some other force here. Our individual armies, our corps, aren't all that terribly big. But in general, the unions are even a little bit smaller and there's more of them. That's creating some kind of maneuvering issues here on the campaign map. Okay. If I let him come all the way over and the battle's here, this force, however large it is probably going to be in reinforcement range. If I march straight west into him and fight another battle here at Lawrenceburg, there's a higher chance that this army over here will not be in reinforcement range. So, I think that's what I'm going to do. Maybe. He may just sit there. And I don't know if I'm against that. Or he may have just been encamped for the night. Yeah, he's still coming. Let's go hit him. Maybe I should have force marched. Oh, okay, yeah, we caught him without reinforcement, so we've got about 14,000 men to 12,000. So that's a pretty even-sized battle. I'm definitely not auto-resolving this one. And this video has been going about an hour, so I believe that the second battle of Lawrenceburg will have to wait until the next episode. If you like what we're doing with the channel, and you know, then go ahead and leave a like, leave a comment, perhaps even subscribe. But at any rate, thank you very, very much for watching. I really do appreciate it.